We'd like to welcome you out to this special Planning Commission meeting on January 8th and would like to call it to order now at 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Chairman Cox.
Here.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Here.
Commissioner Ferris.
Here.
Commissioner Heyman. Here. 4 present. We have a quorum.
Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So move.
Second. Of Mrs. Heyman is the second.
Okay. Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris.
Aye.
Commissioner Heyman. Aye. 4 ayes. Motion carries.
And as this is a special meeting, there won't be any minutes to approve, and we'll do that at our regular scheduled meeting. Moving on to public comments, persons wishing to address the Commission on matters that are within the Commission's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission may not take action on any item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. We'll open it up now for public comment.
Good evening. My name is Mike Brown, and I'm the board president of Grace Lutheran Church, located at 502 North Norma, with a property next, or south, I should say, and contiguous to the proposed 4.56 acre site plan review 19-07 of a 76-unit affordable housing unit. On behalf of our congregation and the board of directors, we strenuously oppose a reduction from 189 required parking spaces to 108 spaces. This reduction of 181 parking spaces is a 43% reduction of the required spaces. To put it another way, we are in favor of keeping the requirement of 189 or 2.46 parking spaces per unit for the 76 proposed units, and opposed to reducing that requirement to 1.42 parking spaces per unit for the 76 proposed units. To reduce the required number of parking spaces is to force residents who will be living in this development to park on the street or their commercial neighbor's parking lot. There is no on-street parking on NORMA, so the overflow parking would go to the many businesses, churches, and the Masonic Lodge located across the street, or to Grace Lutheran Church located next to the housing development. This means that these neighbors would bear the burden of the overflow of any planned inadequate parking. Parking across the street means a great potential for jaywalking, as the closest crosswalks, Drummond Avenue to the north, is about 1/3 of a mile away, and Los Flores to the south is a little bit less than that. Reducing the number of required parking spaces creates a potential conflict over parking between the residents of the proposed housing development and its neighbors. This will become especially problematic on the weekends when the churches and the Masonic Lodge use their facilities the most, and the residents of the housing development have possible need for parking due to weekend visitors. The request to reduce the number of parking spaces is demeaning to those who will eventually live in this new development. The message it sends is this: that low-income residents do not deserve or require the same number of parking opportunities around their homes that others in the community do. That profits for the developer is more important than adequate parking for residents, and that putting the residents of this planned community development in the position of choosing between parking far away from their homes on a city street or taking advantage of their commercial, church, and Masonic Lodge neighbors' parking is unacceptable. For this reason, we strongly urge the Planning Commission to reject the developer's request to reduce the parking requirement for this project and leave the required parking for the proposed 76-unit development at 189 spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment of things that are not on the agenda? Seeing a non-rush to the podium, we will close the public comment section at 6:05 and move on to our public hearing. Item 1, Site Plan Review, SPR 19-07. Site Plan Review, SRP 19-07. I request for approval to develop a 76-unit affordable housing project for families earning up to 60% of the median income of Kern County, and a density bonus, incentive, and concessions. Request to reduce the number of parking spaces from 189 required to 108 provided. The proposed project is located on 4.56 acres located on the east side of North Norma Street, approximately 665 feet north of the West Las Flores Avenue. Staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Happy New Year to you all.
Thank you.
The item before you is a site plan review, as well as a density bonus, incentives and concessions, which are allowed under the zoning ordinance. And
Can you all hear him okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, make sure that you pull that mic as close as you can, sir.
Okay. The project is located on the east side of NORMA Street, approximately 660 feet north of Las Flores Street. It's city-owned property, and the project site is approximately 4.56 acres out of a 31.79 acres, larger area than what's been proposed. So the remainder of the project area is not a part of this application. Only the 4.56 acres is the application before you tonight. Here's a picture of the site looking from Norma Street, looking east. It's a vacant piece of property. And looking across Norma Street, there are several religious organizations up and down the street, and also to the south, as you heard from the speaker before me, is also a church-related organizations and a church located to the south. As this is parcel map, again, it shows the approximate location of the site, which is 4.56 acres out of that 31.79 acre parcel. General plan for the property is RM, which is residential medium, 5.1 to 14 dwelling units to the acre. The general plan also has a limitation. Each unit must have a minimum of 3,000 square feet of land area. I will get to that in a minute when I talk about the number of units and density bonuses and whatnot. The current zoning of the property is R2, which is low-density low-density multifamily residential, which allows the type of proposed project. Here's a picture of the site plan. Parking is pretty much located to the middle of the project area, with the proposed building lining up the north, east, and south and west of the project site. The NORMA Street is on the west side of the site plan, and the access to the project is proposed from an unnamed street, partially dedicated, located on the south side of the proposed project. We'll get to more details in a little bit. The project is proposed as a affordable housing project. It's for families earning up to 60% of the area median income for Kern County. If you Google what's the area median income or Kern County median income, you will get many different estimates. I'm using here only the Census Bureau numbers, and the Census Bureau says median household income for Kern County is $52,479 a year for household. And the Kern County statistics also shows households containing 3.18 persons per household. The applicant is proposing 60% of the median income. That's what the units are meant for. And 60% of the Kern County household median income is then $31,487.40, if you calculate that. Keep in mind, the Census Bureau also says 20.5% of the Kern County population is considered under the poverty or in poverty. And that's a much bigger number compared to some other counties. The proposed project includes 76 units, including a two-bedroom manager's unit. So 75 units will be available as affordable housing units. Out of those 76, 32 bedrooms are two-bedroom units, 36 are three-bedroom units, and 8 are four-bedroom units. In addition to the housing, there is a community center with a pool, a playground, half-court basketball court, and a picnic area is also proposed. When it comes to affordable housing, there's provisions in our zoning ordinance. In addition to that, there are provisions in the state law. More specifically, the Government Code Section 65913.4 mainly deals with affordable housing. Most of that section came out of a piece of legislation. It's easier to call by the legislation number as SB 35. SB 35 was adopted or became effective as of January 1, 2018, and it's due to expire. It's in your staff report in 4 to 5 years from now. what the SB 35 requires is, it requires all jurisdictions to streamline the approval process of affordable housing. Streamlining meaning they have to be fast-tracked. There are certain time limits which the jurisdictions will have to adhere to, and also a criteria that requires each and every affordable project has to meet, and it's included in your staff report what the criteria is and how this proposed project meets. And it's a very long, lengthy list of requirements that will have to be met in order to be eligible for affordable housing project. In addition to that, it heavily, I need to put emphasis on, heavily limits the local jurisdiction authority. In other words, we are limited to only looking at design issues, nothing else under the state law. Number of parking spaces, where the buildings are located, whether there's adequate trash enclosures, adequate access, and whatnot. Nothing else can be considered in complying with in reviewing affordable housing projects in compliance with SB 35. It also limits our hand, even though we usually approve site plans for 1 year, originally 1 year time period, and then they can come back and apply for another 1 year of time extension. But the SB 35 says jurisdictions must give 3 years approval at the beginning, and then it's up to the local jurisdictions' subsequent approvals, time extensions, and whatnot. So therefore, you have a condition approving these projects for an initial period of 3 years. I see the parking is becoming an issue already. What the SB 35 says is, if there's public transportation available to the project site, project can be approved with no parking at all. And if there are parking proposed and the applicant is asking for concessions in terms of parking, number of parking spaces provided, then it says the local jurisdiction must consider that. In our zoning ordinance, when we talk about affordable housing in section, I believe it's 20-32.5, and density bonuses, including concessions and incentives, the zoning ordinance says we can give up to 25% density bonus. Now, I'm sorry, in parking reduction. So the applicant is required to provide 189 parking spaces based on the number of 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units proposed, but applicant is proposing 108 parking spaces. And when you calculate that, it's less than 25% of what we can allow, or the city can allow under our density bonus regulations. These are a sample of a proposed building elevations. The buildings comes with varying roof lines, different colors, and materials. and they are in line with what the general plan calls for multifamily residential units. As I mentioned, the applicant is asking for density increase from 65 units to 76 units. How the 64 units are calculated, as I mentioned earlier, the general plan says the general plan land use designation allows 5.1 to 14 dwelling units to the acre. That's one criteria. And also the general plan has each unit to contain 3,000 square feet of land area. So when you apply one criteria, they are getting more than 76 units. However, if you apply the maximum of 14 units to the acre, they cannot get 76 units. They can get only 64 units. And that's where the density bonus comes in and allow the applicant a maximum of 25% increase, which will cover, more than cover the requested 76 units. Applicant is also asking a reduction in parking. Required number of parking spaces calculated at 189 parking spaces, but the applicant is proposing 108 parking spaces, which comes to 1.42 parking spaces per unit. The applicant has provided a justification, which is included in your staff report, and the zoning ordinance section 20-32 allow the planning commission to give a reduction in parking spaces as an incentive for providing affordable housing. The current zoning ordinance says in order to be eligible for affordable housing, the affordability has to be there for a minimum of 30 years. However, the state law has changed, and we have not changed our zoning ordinance yet. And the state law now requires 55 years of affordability. So I will get to that in a minute when we talk about some changes to conditions of approval. As I mentioned, the SB 35 also gets into CEQA and says these projects are ministerially or categorized as ministerial, therefore no CEQA review is required. So we don't have to comply with or filling out a initial study or come up with mitigation or anything, because they are ministerial and therefore exempt from CEQA review. With that, I'd like to make a couple of changes to the resolution as well as the conditions of approval, and read that into the records. And before you is resolution number 20-01, approving site plan review 19-07, subject to conditions of approval. And in the recital part of the resolution, the city attorney is asking, because there are certain other applications that requires city council approval, and maybe planning commission wants to incorporate those actions that may go before the city council. And some of the city council actions include an application, a joint application with the applicant to the state for affordable housing sustainable communities grant, and also a land sale agreement between the city and the applicant, and also the city taking action to subdivide the property or create a parcel for 4.56 acres for the purpose of building affordable housing. And that recital is already included in your revised resolution that was handed over to you this evening. And also, in the conditions of approval, going with the current zoning ordinance, which says 30-year affordability, which is condition number 28 in your conditions of approval, we request that you change from that condition from 30 to 55 years. With that, I will conclude the staff presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to turn the time over to the commission. I would like to share some information with the commission before you ask your questions. The fellow that came up and visited with us kind of hit the same nerve I did when reading this. So I did my own research, and the interesting thing that I found out, the two developments that are on Downs were developed by the same developer. You have the affordable housing on the east side and the senior side on the west side. And we went to visit the affordable living side. We drove around the parking area different times of the day, found probably 30% of it was empty. So then I was concerned, what's their occupancy? So we went and talked to the manager. The manager said that they're fully booked except for 2. And I said, do you have a parking problem? And he says, only when one tenant takes another tenant's parking spot. He says, relatively, we have about 30% empty. Now, the interesting thing is that's 86 units, and this proposal is 76. They have 106 parking stalls, and this one is requesting 108. Went to the church, went to the school, went to the neighbors behind. They said there has never been a parking or any other issue with that apartment complex. It looks maintained well. My concerns kind of faded away from that standpoint. He said most of our residents, he says a large majority don't even have cars. They'll ride bicycles or they'll take public transportation. He says if they qualify, so he says we just have never had a problem. So that's my concern was the same as yours until I went and talked to the neighbors, and because I went and visited with another council member a number of other apartment complexes, and you're right, they're parked all over the street, but not in this complex. And so I was very impressed with what they had done. Now, that's the research I had and what I found from the manager of that complex. So they have more units, less parking stalls than requested here, and they don't have a parking problem. So I open the time for commissioner questions before I open it up to the public hearing. Commissioner comments?
So I have a few questions. The unnamed street that's going to be to the south of this development, will parking be permitted there?
City has the option to limit parking at any time, any given time, on any public street. I'm not sure whether that is in mind at this time or not. 30 feet of existing right-of-way looks to me like came from the property to the south. This project is required to dedicate additional 30 feet on the north side
Okay.
because they are taking main access off of that that future unnamed street. And also, I think engineering conditions requires them to improve the entire 60 feet of right-of-way, if I'm not mistaken.
Are they doing the improvement on it? Are they doing the improvement on it?
It is.
Curb, gutter, sidewalk, and asphalt?
I believe so. I think that's the.
Well, we'll give him a chance to talk. So.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was wondering, and obviously that's not going to make up for the 80 missing spots, but it was just a question if that would still be able, or they would still be able to use that as overflow parking.
City engineer may want to.
Do you want
We
Lauren
can
or
get, we can
somebody
get,
to
no,
come
we
up?
can, we can get to that later, because I do have other questions
Okay,
too,
well,
but I just,
Go ahead
that,
with
that
your
is
other
one of
questions.
those. And I honestly, I don't know that this issue actually is in the purview of this commission, but that number that we were provided from the Census Bureau, it seems heavily influenced by Bakersfield, probably, because that's the population density. So I would be curious to see the difference. And again, I don't know that that's in the purview of the Planning Commission. We have this in front of us that says,
The project.
right, this is the project, are we going to approve it? So I would ask for some clarification there. Does that take any precedence as far as we know? I'm looking to Heather.
I can tell you that we do actually have a report from, I believe it's from Kerncog, on the affordable housing and the income limits. It's very, it's broken down by 30% up to 60%. So there's very low, and then there's low, and it distinguishes those rents based on those income levels.
Right.
So-
My question was more, this $52,000 or $52,000 and change is probably more heavily influenced by the income in Bakersfield than it is by the average or median income in Ridgecrest.
Right.
So,
That could be very well true.
okay,
Unfortunately, one more time, I need to remind you, sir, we are limited to
correct.
concentrating on the site plan,
Okay.
not any other
So
issue.
it is, okay. Understood, thank you. SB 35 requires that that this be streamlined. Is that why we're having a special meeting?
Not only
opposed to-
streamline, actually, if a project meets XYZ criteria, it says city has to approve it.
Okay.
But this city has a practice of bringing all the site plans before you, or that's the reason why we came before you. And it says if for some reason, if the affordable housing projects are put before a planning commission public hearing, commission should strictly adhere to the rules and regulations, meaning we are limited to reviewing any site plan issues, nothing
That's
else.
it.
Yes.
I think that eliminates a couple other questions then. This is the same developer that did the Downs projects as well. Were all those needs and off-site requirements done correctly and in a timely manner for those projects, or is that out of the purview of this because it's this site plan?
So it becomes whether the applicant is in compliance with other projects and whatnot. So it may be going outside
Outside that?
our purview. So.
But it's not phased, and so in order to have certificate of occupation, the project would have to be done.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're approving this plan.
Correct. And that's what but I want to make sure that we have a good track record with this developer before we grant something that's got a 3-year, that's got 3 extra years. Everybody else gets 1 year. and this has got a 3-year,
Actually, I was quite amazed at how fast those went up.
yeah. And so was I, but I want to make sure those were complete,
Yeah.
not just they built them and,
Had 5 units ready.
correct, correct. So that was the other question that I had. So the other question I had is, if this is approved by Planning Commission, it still needs to go before council, is that correct?
That's correct.
Not the
For
site
public.
plan, sir.
What's that? Not the site
Not the
plan?
site plan. So this will be the approval.
But they have to approve.
They have
selling.
other actions that require city council
Okay.
approval, such as land sale and various other applications that they have to make to the state. So, but
I know my concern, and I've heard other concern, was because this was an emergency meeting, essentially, there wasn't a whole lot of time for public
because
comment.
there's certain time limits that we have.
Oh, yeah, no, I completely understand that, but I also think that if the public wants to weigh in, they should have that ability.
With the other actions by the city council, they will have
Okay. Okay,
an opportunity, yes.
okay. And that are the end of my questions.
Commissioner Hayman?
It was just about the parking, which you answered with the other project on the Downs. So I've driven by that, and there's been empty spots there several times during the day. So, I mean, I don't see an issue with reducing it. So that's all I had.
Commissioner Raja Ratnam?
We are limited only for this, right?
Limited to
But
the
since
project.
you mentioned the income criteria, my curiosity was, what is the sanctity of 60% of the area median income for Kern County? So why did we go by that?
The applicant says that he or she is aiming for 60% of the area median income, people who are earning 60%. But the state law allows them to go up to 80%. But the applicant himself is limiting to 60% of the area median income.
And these apartments are for rent or for sale? Sir?
Rent.
Rent. And approximately what is the rental in there?
I don't have that information. If the applicant is here, maybe he or she can.
I was curious though. So, I mean, you made the math. You said 60% is 31,000 approximately, and for a household of 3 people. And then if the living expenses are 24,000, they are left with 7,000 per year. So is this an affordable housing for them if they are left with 7,000 per year?
But that's not what we're deciding tonight.
Yeah, I see what your
based on
point is,
income,
but
that's not
unfortunately,
what's before us.
I understand, but the discussion, he brought up the discussion. So
Okay,
did you not bring up the discussion?
well,
I've
It's not something we're
thrown
deciding.
some numbers just to give you an idea what the affordability is. But once again, I have to remind you, sir, what the state law says in terms of a public hearing, what our limitations are. We have to strictly to adhere to site plan.
Okay.
Site.
And for the benefit of the public, can you again state the reason for their request to reduce the parking spaces from 187 to?
Again, they are saying that their experience is most of the people are using public transportation. Therefore, what they are providing is more than adequate for parking. And like Mr. Chairman observed, that may be true in terms of the demand for parking spaces.
the developer is here. Would you like him to come up and ask him some of those questions, maybe?
When time comes, I'll ask that.
Okay.
But I'm curious, does that satisfy Mr. Brown's concern?
Well, I appreciate the fact that
Thank you.
I appreciate the fact that you had the forethought to go out and look at that situation. It is anecdotal, and that's my concern. And you go down during the day, you would have to actually do some type of empirical study to my satisfaction. I, again, looking at, what we're requiring of other developments, it seems like we ought to do the same, again, for the reasons that I gave, and also the fact that I would guess over time we probably would increase traffic, not decrease traffic in terms of automobiles. So, I appreciate your answers. I just not sure that I agree with them because they're anecdotal. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments from the commission?
No, not at this time.
Then I would like to open up the public comment portion of this to the public. Any other comments that they would like to make concerning this project?
Hello, my name is Lindsay Stevens. I'm a resident of Ridgecrest. My first question is, did we look to see if this is a delineated earthquake zone? Do we know?
Well, let's ask the developer or ask Lauren. Would you come up and... This is city engineer.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, yes, if you look in the staff report and in the engineering conditions and the engineering findings, you'll find that the number 11 under findings, the project is relatively close to the Little Lake Fault Zone. The project is approximately 720 feet westerly of the Little Lake Fault Zone and 1,087 feet westerly of the plotted Little Lake Fault.
So the reason why I ask is because projects within a delineated fault zone are exempt from SB 35. So it seems like an important thing for us to know if this is within the zone. I know it's close to a fault, but is it within the zone? Because therefore that would allow us more authority to regulate our own property rather than the state telling us what we have to do. I also want to say that it seems to me that the first public discussion about low-income housing complexes should be done first at an open session council meeting for the public to voice support or concerns. It should not first occur at a special planning commission meeting right after the holidays. I don't think this meets our biggest housing need in the community, which is for engineers on base. They're actually exempt from this. And I understand SB 35 ties our hands, but if we're exempt from it because of this being an earthquake zone, that would be good to know. And I would say that given our past 6 months, I would think that we would fall in an earthquake zone. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Kyle Blades, 813 East Church Street. I just had one quick kind of occurred to me while I was sitting there. That is, I appreciate you doing the drive around and the inspection on like how parking spaces were being used. Excuse me, for the apartments that are already here. But I wonder if there's an increase in population from the construction to the base that would maybe start taking up these spaces. People may be falling into that income bracket doing construction work, so maybe it could go to where we do need those parking spaces. So it's really just a comment. It's all speculation. But
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Additional commissioner comments?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, let me just add, and it's just a personal observation because, I kind of have a fit sometimes over parking. But when you look at a facility that is basically fully occupied and the neighbors have not had problems, and that thing's been there, I'm guessing, 10 years. It's well maintained. The rent is based upon their income. This would be very similar, actually identical. The developer could probably tell us, but I was concerned until I talked to the neighbors, until I went different times from the morning to the evening after the base was closed, or most people get off the base, to see what kind of parking needs that there were, and then actually sitting down with the manager and visiting with him. It actually put my mind at ease, and I understand where you're coming from. I don't want them parking on the street, even if it's an unnamed street. But it seems like that there's the ability, based on the income, that there isn't going to be an increase in need as far as parking is concerned. But that's just my personal opinion from the research that I did. And so, yeah, I didn't go at 8 o'clock and everybody's gone to work. But I also took the manager's point of view, too. And he says, yeah, generally about 30% are open. And if you look at the information that's provided, that there's one stall for every 5 units that's vacant for visitors. And if under the information we have 1.42 spaces per unit, and if they just take one or they take none in some instances, I can see why there 30% parking is available. So that's where I come from on that aspect. Other commissioner comments? No comments?
I do have a couple of comments on the resolution, draft resolution. We should say AMG and Associates LLC because it's a legal entity, LLC. You just said AMG and Associates, so we should add AMG and Associates LLC because that's the legal name of this entity.
Anything else?
Yes, 1 second. Item 28 under Exhibit 2.
Were you going to the resolution?
Yeah, the resolution.
Should be on the back.
Item 28.
Oh, okay.
Condition number 28.
Yeah,
That's the
I'm sorry,
condition we changed from 30 years to 55 years.
Okay.
That's I read that
And
into
also
the
it should say this agreement shall be recorded against the parcel, and it should be specific. The parcel should be specifically mentioned there. It said the agreement shall be recorded, so, but we should be very specific saying that this is recorded against the parcel.
Well, they can do that, but because the land hasn't been divided, there's no legal description, so you can't give it a number. You can say it can be recorded against the parcel,
Yeah.
but that's all you can do because
Part of parcel number, we have an existing parcel.
we have an existing
Parcel
the
number.
full
31 acre parcel,
But,
yes.
yeah, you could put parcel in there, recorded against the parcel.
One more, I'm sorry, I'm taking time.
You're just fine.
Excuse me. Which one is the revised? We have a revised one, right? So we added on this one, Commissioner, the revised resolution.
Right.
Section 5 said that the Planning Commission hereby finds that the proposed land sale is consistent with the Ridgecrest General Plan, but we did not mention anywhere here the proposed land sale in the resolution itself.
Yes, we did.
We did? Okay.
It's the
Oh, whereas applicant also, okay.
5, yeah.
Applicant also requires action by the city council, including but not limited to finding of a general plan consistency for the land sale. But we did not mention that the city is selling the land.
The last one says land sale agreement.
Land sale agreement and division of the property.
Which, where?
Same, it's the same one.
Joint application, okay. Okay. Yeah. That's all I have, thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Can we call this addendum A that was handed out with the revision to this resolution?
Updated resolution, it's the
Uh-huh.
updated resolution.
Okay.
So we would approve, we would ask that you approve that one. And that, the conditions of approval would still be the same exhibit.
Okay. I would like to,
Before you make a
yes, sir.
one of the public comments, Lindsay mentioned about some legality or something. So where do we stand on that?
You mean as far as SB 35?
Yeah.
If we're within the earthquake zone?
Not
then-
that big zone, not for this going to the city council first and then before coming to the planning commission.
Well, what they're looking for is the approval of the plan before they goes to the city council for approval of the land sale.
Okay.
So if this isn't approved, then it's not going to go for a land sale or anything else. So that's why we're limited to the project itself. As a project, do we approve the project? Then it goes to the council for the next steps. So they will have their part in this whole thing.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
Why did she have that question then?
I don't know. Is Ms. Stevens still here? Lindsay? Do you want to come up to the mic and answer Solomon's question, please?
You had a concern that this has come to the planning commission before it went to city council.
Right, because I think this type of project is typically one that falls into the NIMBY category, not in my backyard, and that a lot of people probably will have concerns about it once they find out about it. So to me, the first time it should be discussed is in a regularly scheduled council meeting, not for approval at a planning commission meeting, was what I was saying. Does that make sense? So you would first discuss the idea of it at a council meeting, an open session, then you would proceed with a site plan review at planning commission. Because frequently there are accusations of us not being transparent and that things just get rolling before the public is even aware of it.
So you're suggesting that the city council do the site plan reviews?
No, I think discuss the project before there's a
But
site
that's what
plan.
I'm saying. There's no project without a site plan review.
Okay.
So if you don't approve the site plan review and then it goes up for whether or not you sell the land or whatever it is, and it's duly noticed, in other words, Commissioner Ferris talked about, is the public aware? Well, it meets the the standard of normal notification.
But it's
you
an
know,
irregularly scheduled special meeting right after the holidays is the only other concern I have. And I still do think that this property does fall within a delineated earthquake zone, and that then this SB 35 requirements with all of these exceptions, removing our authority, doesn't apply. And so I think we should look at that. I was unaware of that before. I was just scrolling through looking at SB 35, and it specifically states that. And when I pull up a map, this entire parcel, because it's all one parcel, is all highlighted yellow. And I know that before, other properties like McDonald's or the Rose Garden, when they've tried to go in and make improvements, that's really caused them problems because they fall within that yellow zone. So.
We had a condition for that to make sure it is not in.
well, this, Lauren, would you come up here for a minute, please? So as we divide this land, would there be something on title that says that it's within that earthquake zone? Or is there something on our title currently that says that it's within that earthquake zone?
I've not reviewed the deed for the property that the city owns. However, I do have access to the county's GIS website, which they plot the location of the what's known as the hazard zone, as well as the plotted location of where the actual fault occupies. Now, the accuracy of that is somewhat questionable. You really almost have to do geologic analysis, trenching to find actual faults, and then determine what the zone might be for that particular fault. But based upon the information at hand that is utilized by the county and the city, there is a plot that shows the location of the hazard zone, earthquake hazard zone, as well as a plot showing the general location of the fault. And in my review of that, and my findings, and looking at the county's GIS website, my findings and measurements led me to believe that the project is 720 feet westerly of the Little Lake Fault Zone as delineated by the county GIS site. So it does not occupy the zone, but is 720 feet away from the zone. And according to the GIS website, the county's website, I found that the plotted location of the fault, as defined by the GIS, is 1,087 feet away from the site.
Thank you. So, commissioners, from this commissioner's point of view, the only reason to be concerned about the earthquake is to get out of SB 35, which would increase the parking stalls. Now, you look at a 4.5 acre parcel, in order to do 76 units at $12 million, you're going to have a hard stretch to put 109 parking stalls there. So the only reason to push that or put that condition in there is saying, we're not happy with the way it is, and we want the 109 stalls, or the 189 stalls. And so I'm reluctant to put that in there unless there is real hardship here with the parking requirements. So I think we ought to look at this project as the project, as requested, and not try to rewrite it we're either happy with the way it is or we're not. And that's just kind of my suggestion. I don't want an overkill, you know, and I use an observation. I like the Walmart facility. I like the size of the stalls. I like all of it. But even their busiest times, in the outer portions of their parking lot, under these requirements, the city's requirements, they have empty stalls. And so to put a low-income housing, or affordable, excuse me, that was wrong, affordable housing, because they're different, under that same requirement and take up that space and money seems tough or interesting. So if you have any other questions?
You know, my frustration or concern really is that because this is the SB 35 project, that we really have no discretion. It's just an up or down vote, right? We can't really say we don't agree with this, we don't like this, this could be an issue. Doesn't matter, because it's, do we approve this or not? There's no, we can't add anything to it, we can't take away anything.
Well, it falls in the guidelines is the thing. And as long as it falls in the guidelines, yes, it's just an up or down vote.
I mean, if we want, we can say we need 189 parking lots, right?
We could deny the exception, but it may kill the project. You know, so, and that may be the desire too. So,
can we meet somewhere in between to satisfy the public
Well,
and the?
We can't. That's what I'm saying.
no,
It's
this
or-
is the project. It's an up or down vote. There's because we're deciding on the project, we're limited to this. There's a lot of other things which you'll hear in the staff section later on that are in conjunction with all of this. But I'm hesitant to even talk about it because it's not supposed to influence you. This is the project. It meets the guidelines. It meets the state's guidelines. The other thing to be mindful of is the city is required to have a certain amount of affordable housing, and we're not meeting it yet. And so this helps us too as far as the city is concerned. And I look at the other project where they're full except for 2 units. There's got to be some sort of need, or I'm not sure that the developer would just build an empty, because he has to borrow $12 million to, even if it's a low percentage rate, he's got to pay the interest and the payment on it.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't like. This is very restrictive. Now, there is another opportunity coming up. Obviously, if this is approved, that it goes before council, then we can get public, or they can get public comment. Kyle. So I guess it's sort of out of our hands once that's approved.
Well, the site plan's approved. You know,
Right.
the public can then say, no, we don't want to sell them the land. We don't want it there. We don't. I mean, they could do all kinds of things that we have no idea. But, you know, I think they've got a good track record. You look at the facilities that they've got.
Again, not disagreeing.
I think it'd be a great addition to the area. It's the other things that go along with it and that will be talked about by staff, I think will be a great benefit to the neighborhood. And so, anyway, let's vote on it. I move that we approve the resolution 20-01, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Ridgecrest approving the site plan review SPR 1907, a request to develop 4.56 acres portion of a 31.79 acre city-owned property, APN, there's your number, 067-040-12, into a 76 unit, including a manager's unit, affordable residential community targeting families earning up to 60% of the area median income for Kern County, proposed by AMG and Associates Ad LLC, located on the east side of North Norma Street, approximately 665 feet north of west of Las Flores Avenue. Also with the addition, the change to 55 years. And there was one other one, Solomon.
Recording this
We needed to put parcel when it's recorded on the parcel.
against the parcel.
Record against parcel on number 28. So 55 years on 28 and recording against parcel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. And I appreciate your concern and your diligence on this project, too. Okay, moving on. We don't have any committee reports, so we're not going to go into that. Do we have any commissioner comments or future agenda items from the commission?
I would say this is a well-researched and well-documented staff presentation. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much for doing a job well done.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to go to the staff items at this time. Heather? Yes.
So as part of this project, the other component that was mentioned was the co-application for the grant. The co-application is for public improvement projects that would be city selected. They are around the project mostly, but it's about $6 million in public improvements.
7.
Well, I think it's 7.2 million, but it's around that. And those would be projects that staff has identified. Most of those, or a lot of it, is providing access. So there's a lot of our sidewalks that are out of ADA compliance on Las Flores, NORMA, and Drummond. So it would include all of those drive approaches, and all of the sidewalks. There's bike paths that are in our general plan. So those are some of the items that we included in that. Bike paths that would link that area to the high school and the middle school, and also the shopping that's in the area. So those things would increase the ability to walk, not drive. And also there's the addition of electric buses and the addition of some better covered bus stops. There's also landscaping. For us, that's on landscaping, the removal of our grass. And so there's quite a few projects that we would be asking for in the grant.
The sump would be redeveloped.
Oh, yes, that as well.
The lead-in area will be concreted, and it'll be deepened and widened and improved, so you don't have a weed forest that's over there that propagates the mosquitoes. And so when you take those improvements that are going up there, a new bus stop is right there in front, as well as across the street with an enclosure. Includes a couple of electric buses, city buses, and trying to give that access. One of the criteria that was interesting in that research is the fact that where it's located is located close to schools, both elementary, high school, shopping. You know, when the state looks for criteria that they want for this to meet, a piece of property, this meets all that criteria. And so that's one of the reasons that this site was picked. And then with those improvements going in to the benefit of the neighborhood and the community, that's an improvement to the city itself. So,
Mr. Chairman, do you want to talk about the sewer too? for those neighboring?
I
could be.
actually called the Masonic
Okay.
Lodge and talked to him. The Masonic Lodge was concerned because none of the churches across Norma have sewer. They're all on septic. And that's because it dips right there. And of course, that's where the sump is. And so the sewer mains coming off of Felspar, is it Warner. Warner. So it's, can you slide that back? Oh, the remote's down there, and I'd show them.
The best opportunity for gravity sewer service to this site and to the properties along Norma are an extension from a sewer line that exists in Warner. And you can see Warner in that exhibit above there. It's off to the right-hand side. It's on the easterly side of the project site where you see the two-track or the north-south two-track where people have been driving across the dirt there. There's an existing sewer line there and a manhole that lines up with that proposed unnamed street. The best opportunity for gravity sewer is to extend from that manhole and extend up through the proposed future unnamed street to serve the site, then crossing into Norma, in which there would be a branch going north and a branch going south to pick up those properties that are currently on septic systems.
So what I told them, their best option here when I sat down with the engineering staff is it'll end, that main will end about even with the P on the south side of the property line as it feeds that. They could get together as a number of properties if they wanted and just extend one line over and then deal with their properties. But it has to run that direction. If it came off of Las Flores, the LDS Church takes its sewer off of Las Flores. But it would be running uphill if you attach to all of those to get to Las Flores. That's why the main is not being, it's not going down Norma. It'd be running uphill. Very expensive. One of the things we did in infrastructure was the cost, and if we built the sewer plant on city property, there was, I forget, either 4 or 6 pump stations that we had to do, and they were very expensive to do pump stations instead of doing gravity feed. So that was one of the considerations. So that information was passed on to the churches so that they would be aware of that. So anyway, that's kind of the future thing there. Anything else that staff has? Lauren, thank you for your service tonight. And Heather, yours. And the staff report was great. It was very thorough. And we appreciate it. We appreciate the public and their comment. I don't want them to think for 1 minute that we did not consider or hear them, because we do. And it's always tough when you have to make a decision and you can't please everybody. But we're grateful that they come down and express their point of view. If there's nothing else, I'll close this meeting at 7:13.